Okay, we're continuing learning about Passover. Pesach. It's the first of the Jewish holidays, birth of the Jewish people, 3,335 years ago. The Jewish people got out of Egypt. And before that, they were all slaves in Egypt for 210 years. And most of that time was at hard labor. Most of the time, after the tribes died, which what Rashi says, I think it's 119 years, I forget. So after Levi died, he was the last one of the sons of Jacob when he died. So then it really started the exile. Okay, it's a pretty bizarre story. It's the basis of Judaism. We remind that in all of our prayers, we're always reminding of going out of it. It's a commandment to remember going out of Egypt. The first Rebbe of Chabad, we learned that one day. The first Rebbe of Chabad stresses that it's a commandment that a person has to not just remember it, but every day. It says every generation. That's what it says in the Mishnah. But every day you have to remember going out of Egypt. And he said that really means every moment going out of Egypt. What's so bad about Egypt? Because Egypt was the country where we were slaves, like we say, politically and sociologically, etc. Egypt is totally different now than what it was back then. Back then, it was a totally decadent country. They didn't believe in. Today, it's a Muslim country, which is certainly not decadence. I mean, it's not idolatrous. That's the saving grace of Islam, is that it's not idolatrous. They believe in only that there's only one God. They pray to one God. But back then, it wasn't that way. Back then, they prayed to almost everything that moved, except the Jews. And the Jews really did move. They moved out of the whole. They prayed to cats and they prayed to dogs. Especially, they prayed to sheep. They prayed to the river. They worshipped all these things. The river Nile, the Nile River, that was their god. But that's sort of logical because the Nile River provided them all of their sustenance. So there's a place to think that it would be. What do you got to worship a sheep for? I don't know. I guess there's different strokes for different folks. What the person gets from the worshiping a sheep? I don't know. Anyway. So they worshiped sheep and they worshiped everything. They worshiped they worshiped Paro. They said Paro, he was a god, and they worshiped everything. So going out of Egypt was essentially, it means going out of nature. There was no way that any human being could or that ever did get out of Egypt. It says there was never a slave that escaped from Egypt. First of all, they were tremendous sorcerers and magicians over there. It says that Moses, when he went to Paro, so God said, go to Paro, show him a sign. It will really impress him. And with what? He said, take a stick, your staff, throw it on the ground, and it'll turn into a snake. So Moses went into Paro. I mean, how he got into Paro's palace, I don't know. It doesn't really explain. There's Midrashim that explain how that was. But that was enough of a miracle. But the Torah doesn't talk about that at all. Here, the Jews are supposed to be total slaves, no one, not to raise up their head at all. And suddenly Moses is standing in front of Paro and he's saying, let the Jews go. And we see what happened, that how much Paro did not want to let the Jews go. After 10 plagues, right? He still, the 10th plague, he said he sent the Jews out, and then he regretted it. They chased after the Jews to the Yam Suf, to the Red Sea, if you want to call it, the Reed Sea. So they didn't want to let him go. So all of a sudden, here's Moses standing in front of Paro, and he says, let the Jews go. Who is this guy? What are you talking about? That's the whole... It's almost like in America saying, don't use any more electricity. No more electricity. They don't want any electricity. I mean, that's sort of what they're trying to do. Anyway, but don't turn off the electricity. The Jews were the manpower of Egypt. They were the workers. It says there was like 15 million Jews. At least it says only 1/5 got out of Egypt, and that was about 3 million. So there was like 15 million Jews. There's a lot of Jews there, and they did all the work. They were the slaves, and no one raised up their heads. All of a sudden came Moses and let everybody get it, and to show Paro how powerful he was, as God said, I got a trick directly from the Lord, the creator of the universe. Watch this, Paro. And he took his staff and he threw it on the ground and it turned into be a snake. And Moses said, what do you say about that? And everybody just looked at each other and they were all laughing and scoffing. And, what are you guys laughing about? He said, I'll show you. He called in a group of school kids that came in and says, see what this great Jew did? He turned a stick into a snake. I said, well, we can do that. And they all did it. Everyone could turn sticks into snakes. And it's like the national pastime or something. But then Moses' stick ate, a snake turned back to a stick and it ate up, its snake turned back to a stick and it ate up their snakes. In any case, the point of the whole business is that here is Moses standing in front of Paro, and he's saying, let the Jewish people go. And the Jewish people, and he did. And in the end, the Jewish people got out. It was impossible for them to get out. The Egyptians were tremendous sorcerers. They ruled over the spiritual, they were really religious people. They believed in their, and it worked. This was practical religion. This is not, you go and you pray for something and it doesn't happen. It happens in 2,000 years. We've been praying for Moshiach for 2,000 years. Here it goes, you pray, 2,000 years later it comes. So what was the problem? I came, I said I was going to come. What are you talking about, 2,000 years? We've been waiting. Listen, don't complain, here I am. Let's just get to work. By the Egyptians, they prayed, that was it. Immediately, the stick turned into a snake. They didn't have to wait. That's good religion. That's religion. That's what it should be, right? You pray and the things go. It says, no, that was idolatry. It worked. It was popular. They ruled over the whole world. The Jews didn't even rule over themselves. They were slaves. So who wants to be a Jew? All of a sudden comes along Moses, flips the whole thing around. The Jews all of a sudden came out and said, we're the servants of God. We're the servants of God. And Pharaoh didn't even believe in God. Okay. So that we have to remind ourselves every day, not the political changes that happened back then and not the fantastic victory that the Jews were victorious, but the fact that we could go out of nature, that if you're connected to the creator of the universe, you can go out of nature. Right? So turning a stick into a snake is part of nature. If you know the tricks, I don't know the tricks, but if you know the tricks, then you can do a trick spiritually and have an effect on the physical. You can actually do it. It says that the Bilam, the enemy of the Jews, he knew how to fly. If you know properly the tricks of nature, how to concentrate and how to you can levitate. That's what these transcendental meditation people say. They can meditate. Maybe they can. Could be they can. What does it prove? It proves that they're super egotists. They know how to use their powers in order to rule over nature, right? To rule over to rule over nature, to articulate nature, to change nature, right? But the Jews, they went out of nature. They went out of nature. The Jews, even despite the fact that the Egyptians were tremendous sorcerers and that they ruled over the world, they did anything they wanted to. How do they say? You do what you want, when you want, whatever you want, how you want, do everything you want. In Egypt, and they ruled over it. The Jews went on, and the Jews had no power whatsoever. The Jews had been abject slaves. It's not that Moses came and taught them, some new tricks or gave them some new secret weapons or, taught them new, whatever it is, passageways under the ground or something. Or he showed them, that, help from the what's it called, aliens or something like that. No, the creator of the universe actually changed the whole universe. And he changed it for the Jews. That's the message of the Jews. And that's the whole idea of Mashiach. That's what we know the idea of Mashiach is from the first commandment of the Torah. I am God that took you out of Egypt. That's the first commandment of the 10 commandments. How did God take them out of Egypt? By Moses. The same thing is going to be somebody that's going to take us out of the Egypt that we're in now, namely nature. The word Egypt is limitations. Okay. After that introduction, now let us learn in the book Likuti Torah. Let's see one message over here. Maybe the message is that, what's this? Shavua Tov, Rabbi, the waiting room. I know. You don't have to tell me. I know. I see. So I have to let people in. Okay. What can we do? I don't know. You have to.
So you changed the settings.
I did. I changed the setting. I was not lying, but it seems that was not the setting that I was supposed to change. So we'll see what I did change. I changed something.
Okay. So I hope your son or somebody could figure it out.
Yeah, I'll ask him. Okay.
Rabbi, do you know? Quickly, I don't want to interrupt. Do you know your schedule for?
I don't. We'll talk about it later. Let's go.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know my schedule. There we go. Because this Wednesday night is going to be Passover, Pesach.
Yes.
So for sure on Wednesday and on Thursday and Friday, probably I won't give a class. We'll see. I don't know. Let's go. Let's see. Sheshet yamim tochal matzot o b'yom hashvi atzeret l'Hashem. 6 days you must eat matzos, which is of course not so. We only have to eat matzah one day, the night of the Passover. But it says 6 days you should eat matzah. And on the 7th day, one second. And on the 7th day is a tzirat, a gathering day for God, your God. Lo ta'aseh malacha, you can't do any work. That's a sentence in the Torah that explains what about Passover. The sentence is about Passover, Pesach. The holiday of Pesach is 7 days long. 7 days long. 6 days you eat matzah, and the last day is a gathering day for God. Okay, so it ends up that the first day is really a holiday. The first day of Passover is a holiday. Outside of Israel, it's 2 days. But the first day in Israel, it's 2 days. First day is Passover, is a holiday. And the last day is a holiday. It's a holiday. You're not supposed to do any work. You can't turn on lights. But interestingly enough, it's a holiday like all the other holidays, and you're allowed to cook. You're allowed to cook. You're allowed to prepare food. Right? Lo taseh malacha. Usually on all the other holidays, it says lo taseh melechet avodah, lo tasu. It says you shouldn't do any melechet avodah, work that is not connected to food. That's what it means, melechet avodah. But eating, you can prepare for food for eating. Also on the 7th day of Pesach, you can. But for some reason, which the Rebbe is going to discuss, it does not say melechet avodah. Melechet avodah means you're not allowed to do melechet avodah, work which is not connected to eating. That you're not allowed to do. But you are allowed to do work that's connected to eating. You're allowed to. And it should say, that's what it should say here. Don't do any melechet avodah. You're not allowed, it's prohibited for you to do any work not connected to eating. That's the fact. But it doesn't say that here. Here it says don't do any work like on Shabbat. On Shabbat, you're not allowed to cook. You're not allowed to do anything that's connected to eating. Right, on Shabbat. And the fact is, it's not like Shabbat. It's like all the other holidays. Why does it leave out the word avodah? Okay, we'll see. Right? If it would say avodah, that would make it, that would permit you, if it would say don't do any melechet avodah, that would permit you to do work for eating, which in fact you can't. Why doesn't it say it? Okay. We have to understand. Now again, for those of you who don't know or just came in late or watching this on YouTube later on, as this book is one of the foundation books for Hasidut Chabad, for the teachings of Chabad. As you see, there's Chabad houses all over the world. They're really nice people, and they're very friendly, and they're genuine, right? And they're not, they're just trying to wake Jews up to who they are, right? They're just wake up Jews to who they are. But there happens to be behind this a lot of literature. Every Rebbe of Chabad wrote very unique essays, actually said them, and they wrote them down afterward. Very unique. And all of them deal with basically the same topic: God, the Jews, the world, and the Torah. The interrelationship between them. Between God and the Jews and the world and the Torah. Basically, that the Jews, by means of the Torah, are supposed to correct and bring blessing to the world. And of course, God is the boss of the whole thing. So to reveal the Creator in His creation. That's it. So in order to do that, so we have to explain what is exactly the creation and what is the Torah. And the creation is much more complicated in the Torah. is much more complicated, and the Jews are much more complicated, and God is much more complicated than we can possibly imagine. But on the other hand, it's all one. It's all one. God is just one. He's the creator. That's it. The world is one big creation. That's it. The Torah is the will of God, the wisdom of God. The Jewish people are the sons of God. They're the soldiers of God. They're the messengers of God to make this world into a perfect place. Okay, so that's what all these are talking about. All these different details, how it fits into this one unity, this one picture of God and the Torah and the Jews and the world are really one. And that how it's totally not revealed now, but it will be. All right, let's go. So one of the holidays of Judaism, it says, is Pesach. And Pesach, it says you should eat matzah for 6 days. And on the seventh day is a gathering day for God, your God. You shouldn't do any work. Lahavin, to understand. B'shmini Atzeret, the last day of Sukkot, the holiday of Sukkot, which is on the other side of the year. The holiday of Sukkot has 7 days, and there's an additional day tacked onto it, an additional holiday called Shmini Atzeret. On this it says Atzeret to you, Lechem, and here it says Atzeret LaHashem Elokecha. By Atzeret it says it should be a gathering day for you, and here it says a gathering day for God. The Gam, what does it mean? Also, Lo Taseh Malacha. What does it mean? You shouldn't do any work. Havalei Lamemer, it should have said Malachat Avodah, like I explained to you. It should have said you shouldn't do any regular menial work, but you can do work in order to make food. Ochel nefesh is mutter, it's permissible on Yom Tov. You can cook on the seventh day of Passover. It's permissible for you to cook. Why doesn't it say that? Why does it say forbid everything? And why here does it say that it should be a gathering day for God? And on the 8th day of Sukkot, it says a gathering day for you. It's like this. It says in the Talmud in Pesachim, there's an argument of the Tanaim, of the the rabbis. Binyan Yom Tov, the rent of Rabbi Elazar says that all you have to, they has to be all for God, or all for yourselves, one or the other. Rabbi Yeshua says it can be half for God and half for you. What does it mean, half for you? If you say all for God, it means that the whole day you should be in synagogue, praying, learning Torah. You can eat something that's not that important. That says no, Rabbi Elazar says. Rabbi Yeshua says no, that it's half is for you, and they should have a nice meal, which of course that's the law. Half for you, and the other half you should sit and learn and do holy things, etc. Shnei mikra echad, both of them learn the same pasuk. One says Atzeres LaHashem Elokecha. It says, one says no, it says Atzeres Tiyelochem. One of them learns from the last day of Passover, where it says that it has to be a gathering day for God. And the other one learns from Shmini Atzeres, where it says a gathering day for you. Rabbi Elazar says either totally for God or totally for you. Rabbi Yeshua says, Chalko, you divide it, chetzit, half and half. In any case, because it says by the seventh day of Passover, it has to be for God. Michalal, this has a place to say, Sheish bo sheichas yoter liot kula Hashem. If so, the seventh day of Passover, that's where it says clearly that the whole seventh day of Passover should be totally to God. So this, we can imply from that there's more of an inclination on the seventh day of Passover to make it totally for God, that we should just sit and learn all day, even though that's not the law. But instead, nevertheless, we should stress that more than in seventh day of Passover. Now we can understand also why it says Lo Taseh Malacha, why it says over here you shouldn't do any work. Lo Taseh Malacha. The kivan boy, because if you want to, you can make it all for God. Therefore, it's forbidden to do any sort of work, even to prepare food on last day of Passover. Okay, the law is not like that. The law is that you should make a nice meal and everybody should be get together. That's half of it, and the other half of it you devote to praying and to learning Torah, etc. Okay, but we see that the seventh day of Passover is a little bit different than all the other holidays, because all the other holidays, in fact, it is permissible to prepare food, and it says it clearly in the Torah that it's permissible. And on the seventh day of Passover, even though that it is permissible, but it doesn't say so clearly in the Torah. So therefore, there's more of an inclination from the Torah that we should devote the whole thing to God on the seventh day of Passover. Why? Okay, here we go. This is a little bit illegal, so let's go. Hine, behold, Ikra Simcha, the main joy. That's what it means. It should be for you. The main joy that a Jew has in general, like on the holidays, is sitting and eating with the family, right? Not exactly. Lismoach bo Yisrael, to be happy with God. Like it says, Yismachu b'cha Yisrael. The Jewish people should be happy in you. Okay, how can we be happy in God? What does that mean to be happy in God? Well, one way you can be happy with God is just to thank God for everything you've got. He's creating you, he's enlivening you every instant. He's giving you all you have. Anything that you've got, God have. You have foot, you have a foot, you have a leg, you have an eye, you have an ear. Thank God. Whatever you have, thank God. Right? You're alive, you're breathing, thank God. That's one way to be happy with God. But the Jews have an additional reason to be happy with God, and that is that God says to us that we can repay him. We can repay him. And we can repay him in a very, very exact way. By doing the commandments, by doing what God says. That's repaying God. Why in the world God wants us to do things? That's why he set up the world. He set up the world in such a way that the Jewish people are fixing up. That was Adam. The first person to come to fix up the sin of Adam was Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. What was their whole thing? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They did what God wanted. That's the point. And they were happy to do it. That's what it says in the book of Tanya. The main thing is they were happy. Why were they happy? It says Abraham was even happy when he took his son to sacrifice him. He wanted to sacrifice his son. It would destroy his whole life, everything he lived for. Abraham's whole life was just kindness, just giving. And the only one that got the point of doing what God wants was his son, Isaac. And God said, Abraham, you've been serving me your whole life. You get a big reward. Yeah, what's the reward? Take your son and kill him. Abraham didn't say, well, what do I get from this? It didn't say anything. That's what you want, God, I'll do it. That's the main joy that a Jew has, and eventually the whole world will have, is to be happy in God. Kamaimah, like it says, Yismachu b'cha Yisrael, to be happy in you. In you. So we're happy because the creator of the universe is telling us what to do, and we can do it. Behold, Hagam, even though it says Simcha Zu, that is joy. Tzorech liot has to be the whole rest of the year. Im calls them nevertheless a Yom Tov. When we have holidays, Yom Tov, Nikra is called Moadim L'Simcha. All the holidays are called Moadim L'Simcha, holidays for happiness. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Oh, there we go. The holidays are called Moadim L'Simcha. The Jewish holidays, these are like windows into the infinite. The world doesn't confuse us as much. Things become a little clearer. Sha'az simcha shal mitzvah, then the joy of doing the commandments is biyoter seit, even more with more power and more, what do you say, genuineness. V'atam, and the reason, shehine, behold, just one moment, please. One moment, please. Ready, go, let's go.
No, it's Rabbi. It's not a real hand. It's a zoom. It's a picture of a hand.
Okay, no problem. Hine, I see. I get it. Hine, I don't see that either. Hine, even though a person has to be happy with God all the time. Why should you be happy with God all the time? For the two reasons I said. Whatever we have, God is giving us. True, there's a lot of troubles in the world also, but if you concentrate, you've got an option. You can concentrate on them, or you can concentrate on the good things, or at least you can concentrate on the good things a little bit. Concentrating on the good is like how do you say, you ever have a pressure cooker? There's these things, I don't know if people use pressure cookers anymore. It's a pot that's all sealed up. You heat it up, and it cooks things really fast. It cooks really fast because it doesn't have any place for the steam to go out. It doesn't go out, so it really cooks everything fast. But then when you want it to see, there's this little latch on it, and then and all the steam goes out. So the same thing, the world can get very confusing and very depressing and very frightening and very overwhelming, and etc. But there's a little pressure, a little latch that you can open, and that is thinking about God. You think about, listen, God is with me. And if you don't want to know, if you want to know how to think about God under difficult situations, there's the book of Psalms. Look at the book of Psalms. It's translated into almost every language in the world. There was nobody that had troubles like King David. Most of our troubles are imaginary. 98% of our troubles are imaginary troubles. And another 1% of them are how we take it. If it's real difficulties, right, the fact that we take it in a negative way, that adds a little bit more. 1% is genuine troubles. There's genuine troubles in the world, terrible, awful, in the world, overwhelming confusion and this. But on the other hand, if we change our attitude and that 1% of bad, when you think about God, you think, listen, there's a creator. Everything God does is for the good. I don't understand how, but God, please help me to see it. God, please take away the problems. God, be with me. God, whatever you want to. Look at how King David did it. He was an expert. His whole life was like that. It was really good at praising, connecting to God under the worst situations possible. Okay, but that's not what we're talking about over here. We're not talking about that. Here we're talking about being happy to do the commandments, to be able to do what God wants should make us tremendously happy because we're returning to God a little bit of what we owe him. We owe him everything. And God doesn't ask for everything. He doesn't say, okay, Thursday, cut off your leg, right? Thursday, whatever is June the 7th, okay, everyone take out one eye. He could say whatever he wanted to if he wants. The whole thing belongs to him, but he doesn't do things like that. That's cruelty. He doesn't do it. Even though there's a lot of cruel things that happen in the world without our doing it. But okay, the idea is to concentrate on the good. When you concentrate on the good and you give God, thanks to God for the good, so it makes the situation a little bit better. A little bit better. Why God had to make it bad in the first place? Why God? That's God's business. I don't know why. God, the fact is, if he didn't want to make it bad, he wouldn't have created the world at all. What he has to put in the world. It's no wonder that all these other religions say the main thing is to get out of the world. The world is terrible. You got to get out of the world and go to heaven. Judaism says no, we can't. That's cowardice. You have to stay in the world and fix up the world. But God gave you the power and the ability and the instructions how to do it. So it says, but still, nevertheless, it's pretty hard to be happy all the time. It's not happy, and in fact, it's hard to be happy anytime. But on the holidays, it's a little bit easier. Therefore, Yom Tov, that's why the holidays are all called in Judaism Moadim L'Simcha. They are holidays for joy. Sha'az, then the joy of the commandment is Biyoter says it's more powerful. Vatam, the reason is, why is there more happiness? In the time of when the temple was standing, people used to go to the temple 3 times a year for the holidays, right? But now we don't go to the temple. But nevertheless, the happiness is no less. The reason is Al Yudei mitzvahs, maybe there's a little bit less, but in any case, the happiness is still available to us. But the reason is that it's easier to be happy now. On the holidays, to be happier serving God is Al Yudei mitzvahs, Al Yudei mitzvahs, because by means of the commandments. Why be happy doing the commandments? What's there to be happy? By means of doing the commandments, okay, number one, we're doing what God wants, so we are returning to God. But also, God returns to us. God reacts. It's a very basic principle of Chassidut. God reacts. There's drawing down additional light into the world of Atzilut, in the spiritual worlds, V'gam b'kelim, and also into the vessels, the outer parts of these spiritual worlds. The godly soul, Nimshacha, comes from Panimia Gilui, from the inside revelation that's in Betocho Bebechinas or Panimia. Okay, now we're getting a little bit Kabbalistic over here. What's the difference between the Jews and everybody else? So it says the Jews are the sons of God, right? We've been through this a lot of times, and it says in the Torah, Bani matem al Hashem Elokeichem. It's a sentence in Vayikra. We have to find it in Leviticus, where it talks about don't make a mark on your flesh because you are sons of God. You couldn't do it. And also when Moses went into Paro to say, let the Jews go, he said, listen, I got a message, Paro, I got a message from God. My son, my chosen ones, Israel, but they Bechor Israel. The Jewish people are God's sons. What does it mean? So now, in order to understand that, you have to go a little bit into Kabbalistic ideas over here. Because what does it mean? We're the sons of God. God is a person. God is a wife. What does it mean? We're the sons of God. What does that mean? Right? And so, of course, God does not have a wife. And God is, and when it says that we're the sons of God, it's talking about our soul. The soul of a Jew is the son of God. In fact, the bodies of the Jews are even higher. The bodies of the Jews were chosen by God. That's even higher. But maybe we'll talk about that later. But let's just go to the happy part. So it says there's all these upper worlds, all these spiritual worlds. And the more and more spiritual the worlds are, the more they realize how great God is, how good God is, and how far away they are from God. Here in this world, we don't realize how far away we are from God. Exactly the opposite. We think we are God. I have self-awareness. I have free choice. I have the consciousness. That makes me God, right? That's what it feels. But the upper worlds, they know the truth, that we're really creations. And the higher and the higher and the higher the worlds there are, the higher dimensions of creation there are, the more they realize godliness. There's these angels that are burning up all the time. It says, but all these angels are nothing compared to the souls of the Jews. That's why the Jews are called sons of God. All the rest of the creations are called the creations of God. What does that make up? We're the sons of God. What does that make it? That we're special. We're special for what? You see, the Jews have suffered all the time. They all get, and they have all these obligations and responsibilities they don't even want. Well, who says that? So I don't want to be a son anymore. Why do I have to do this stuff? So the answer is no. We have a job that only by us can we make the world be aware of how good God is and how loving God is. And all these things that I said about gratefulness to God, that's where Yehudi comes from the word hodaya, to be thankful. So it says the Jewish people, the Jewish souls, they come from the inside of all of these spiritual worlds. From the world spirit, it says this, even though the source of the godly soul comes from the inside of the vessels of Bria Yetzirah, to explain the difference between lights and vessels now, I don't know if now is the time because the time is running out, but nevertheless, you can say there is such a thing. You know, every creation that there is, there's an inside to it and outside, even the spiritual creations, the fact that the spiritual creation like let's say the angels, that they exist, that they have a definition to them, that's the vessel. And the fact that they're alive, that's what's called the light. The lights in the vessels, or in simple English, the soul and the body. Everything has a soul and a body to it. So there's all these different dimensions. Okay, nevertheless, the nefesh elokis, the godly soul, ein meir, it doesn't shine in this inside way. The light of God does not shine in the godly soul, no matter how high it is. It doesn't come in an inside way, but in a surrounding way. What does it mean, a surrounding way? Let's not even take the godly soul. Let's just take me and you, right? A normal person. Everybody's alive. Every human being is alive. Is there any human being that understands what life is? No one understands what life is. Look at all the scientists, all these things. No one understands. The people that say they understand it, they're liars. They're liars. They're just saying it to comfort themselves so that they won't be, they can think that they can put life into their pocket. Life is just a combustion. It's whatever it is. It's what is it? The organic combustion of this. There's no such thing as a soul of a conscience of this, of humor. People don't even have a sense of humor. There's no such thing as anything outside. We're just animals. Right, that's all there is. And how do animals live? How do the animals live? That's also the same thing. They come from amoebas, and they come from originally from rocks, and they come eventually from who knows what. But it's not so. The fact of the matter is nobody understands what life is. Life is a thing which is called makif. It surrounds over us. It enlivens us. It keeps us alive. Right? It's the most personal thing we've got. But nobody understands what it is. Hainu, mishum, because the soul, the animal soul, covers and conceals and the what's called the godly soul. Okay, so in a human being, right, every human being is alive, that a person's natural feelings cover over any interest that he has in his soul, any interest that he has in any mysteries whatsoever. He's just into the world. Right? What's it going to do if I understand the mysteries of the soul? How is that going to help me, get a good job or to provide for my family or whatever? And some people, who says there is such a thing? Well, how much more so the godly soul? And a Jew has an additional soul, not just a spiritual soul, but a godly soul. Like we said, the spirit is part of the creation. A Jew has what's called the godly soul. And if you don't feel the regular spiritual soul, you don't understand it, how much more so the godly soul. That's what it means. That's what it means that God is standing behind the wall. That's in the weekdays. But on Yom Tov, on the holidays, there's an additional revelation of this light. The soul doesn't shine so much in an external way, but it shines more in an internal way. It becomes more relevant to our day-to-day life. What God is doing, how God is creating us, to be thankful to God, to have love for God, to have awe of God. And this is tremendously happy. Happy about means of by means of this, by means of this on the holidays, when a Jew, when he feels God, when he feels the godliness that is creating us and how God cares about us, and God cares about all the details, and that the whole entire business is one big and amazing miracle. Well, usually we don't feel this. We don't feel this at all. We don't perceive it. Why should we even think about it? We don't even perceive it. But the fact is that it does exist, and it's infinitely, infinitely good. And on the holidays, we feel it. That's why the holidays are called Yom Tov. It's a good day. Tov means good. We feel the goodness of God. And when we feel this goodness of God, it makes us happy. And that cleans a little bit. It shines up. It shines up our natural personalities for the rest of the year until the next holiday comes also. That's what it means that this is King Solomon. Remember, we talked about this, that in the book of the Song of Songs, that King Solomon describes in a very, I'd say, poetic and metaphorical, mysterious way, the relationship between the Jews and God and the Jews, and how he took us out of Egypt, and he took us to the Mount Sinai, and it's a wedding day, and the Moshiach is going to come. It's a consummation of the wedding. And these different relationships that we run away from God, and God hides himself from us, and then we hide ourselves from him, and then he reveals, he calls us, then we call him, etc. We're looking for it. So that's what it means, mashgiach min chalonos. That sometimes it says that God looks at us through the windows. It's a bigger opening than we had over here, that he's standing behind our wall. We don't see him at all. We don't see God at all. But on the holidays, it says that God looks at us through the windows. And therefore, then the holidays are holidays for joy. That the happiness is revealed. Now, a person, if you have any wonder, what is this happiness? Where does happiness come from? So the answer is, happiness is part of your soul. You ever see children, little children, they're happy. Little children, you give them what their basic needs, what they want, and they're happy. They can play with each other. Little kids, right? They don't care.
They're easy to make happy.
The children are naturally happy. Children are naturally happy. If you give them, just provide for their needs, what they want, then they're happy. If there's nothing, they're not cold or whatever, they're happy. They play with each other, they care with each other. Once in a while, a kid slaps the other kid or something like that. But generally speaking, so they have to be watched out because they don't know what they're doing. Or one kid takes away the stick from the other one or something. But generally speaking, kids are happy to the degree that it says that there's a law in Judaism that if God forbid somebody dies, so the relatives have to mourn. They have to mourn. There's what's called the house of mourning. They mourn for 7 days. Mourning for 7 days. A near relative passed away. It's forbidden to bring little children, into the house of a mourner, because little children make you happy. And you're not supposed to be happy in those days. You're supposed to be happy serving God all the time. But here the concentration is supposed to be that you're doing what God wants. You're mourning for this dead person. Death is a very sad thing, because you can't do what God wants when you're dead. You can't do what God wants. Death, because this world is essentially a very good place. Essentially, it's a good place, and we have to make it even better by ignoring the negative things and transforming the negative things. Okay, but it's nevertheless, when a person dies, so it's bad. So you're not supposed to bring a child, because happiness is a natural state of the soul, to reveal this. But children have a different type of happiness than older people do. Children have happiness because they're free. They've got no obligations. Human people, the older people are not so happy all the time because they have responsibilities to do. But when a person fulfills his responsibility, it's a greater happiness than a child. It's a greater happiness than a child. Children there is no happiness greater than having children, seeing your own children grow up, right? It's a happiness that can't be duplicated. No matter how much it might be disparaged and everything, and now they want to make sex changes and the homosexual things and that, right? It's a war against happiness. It's a war against happiness. It's a war against children, against having a family, against having a society. All these things are happy things. You have a society, you see people, everybody's getting along, you say good morning to people in the street. Nothing is happier, right? Especially even more happy is having your children, seeing your children grow up. Right, people that don't have children, they go to doctors that may try to make something. Okay, you can, how do you say, justify? You can get along with it. Okay, loch, and therefore hikrivu shalmi simcha. Therefore, in the time of the Holy Temple, they used to make happiness holidays when you feel the source of life. The source of life. Life is happy. The source of life, that's God. You feel God. You feel that God is more alive. He's not just this, the Wizard of Oz sitting up on a mountain or something. God is creating us. God is infinitely more real than anything we can possibly imagine. Infinitely more valuable and precious than even life itself. That's why so many Jews are willing to give their lives for God, not to go to heaven. The Jews want to stay in this world. But because God is the source of all life. Is the source of all life. Says that's a tremendous happiness when a person feels that he doesn't feel himself. Therefore, simcha shezil, then it has an effect on the natural self also that usually conceals over this spark of godliness in the soul of a person and prevents happiness. And by the way, by means of hakravasi in the morning, when Jews used to go to the temple and they would make these sacrifices and do what God wants, which we talked about that, why God wants the sacrifices is totally incomprehensible, but that's what he wants. By means of doing that, you knew you're doing God. So God reacts. Nichlalas va'ola, then the animal soul of the Jew actually is elevated and brought by the fire that comes down from above. What fire comes down from above? The godliness, Hainu lamokar chutzpah, the source of all life, from what's called the face of the ox on the chariot. Okay, this we're going to talk about more tomorrow, but we're talking about the seventh day of Passover here, essentially. This also gives us an idea of what Passover is, and we'll talk about this more in detail, God willing, tomorrow.